Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler gave a press conference today in Portland, Oregon, regarding the text messages between Joey Gibson and the Portland police. It's also very possible that this mayor is just simply using this revelation to boost his own popularity. Okay, so there's the actual issue of what happened, and then there's political grandstanding. I would recommend overlooking elements of potential political grandstanding. After all, he did vote to keep Portland in the JTTF. Keep in mind what the actual issue is, and that we are seeing things like this throughout the nation. So I'll go ahead and play it out. I may comment here and there if and when it's appropriate.
Face value, the text messages are still concerning for a number of reasons. For example, what is the value to policing of offering advice on how to avoid arrest regarding somebody who has an active warrant outstanding? Is that standard police strategy? Is the enforcement of warrants done uniformly throughout PPB? So let's start with doing a brief recap of what we've done to address the matter so far. In order to investigate potential bias in the PPB thoroughly, we've called for an internal investigation concerning communication on all sides. I want clarity on the type of communication PPB is engaging with all demonstrators. Chief Outlaw and I are also going to implement training for the Portland Police Bureau around how to identify white supremacy based on the recommendations of the Oregon Justice Resource Center, the Council on American Islamic Relations Oregon, CARE Oregon, and the Western States Center. I've also called for an independent investigation to review the potential existence of bias in the actions of the PPB leading up to and during demonstrations involving alt-right and anti-fascist protesters.
Yeah, but people had to make demands for that to happen first.
Chief Outlaw agrees that this is a
They
necessary
demanded to be
step
independent.
and is more than ready to do the work alongside me. Now we need to wait for the facts. That's why I want to see all communications between liaisons and demonstrators right now. We've only been talking about communications between Lieutenant Nia and Joey Gibson. And I want to make this crystal clear. Lieutenant Nia is entitled to due process. At face value, while I believe these texts don't look good, but now we've had a couple of days to process this story, and there are elements of information gathering that are unfamiliar to the public. We know that the Portland Police Bureau reaches out to all sides in demonstrations. For my part, I intend to reserve further judgment until both the internal investigation and the independent external investigation are both completed. I want to shift gears to the proposed expansion of the Zenith oil terminal in the city of Portland. In 2014, Zenith Energy applied for a building permit to construct infrastructure that would allow them to offload and operationalize an increased number of oil trains in the city of Portland. This permit was issued 2 years before the City Council approved legislation in 2016 that would prohibit the construction of new fossil fuel infrastructure in the city of Portland. I supported that legislation as a candidate for mayor. As such, I'm committed to undertaking whatever action I'm permitted to ensure that there are limits
Okay, this is like his State of the
this
Union.
proposed expansion.
So we're commenting on Wheeler's State of the
I do
Portland
not
Union.
support the proposed activity at the Zenith site. The risks associated with running oil trains anywhere, let alone through a major city, are significant. And I remember clearly the environmental catastrophe in Mosier, Oregon, 3 short years ago, when a 96-car oil train derailed. Risks of derailment, of air and water contamination, of public health hazards are ever present. Now in 2019, I'm still in full support of ensuring that the City of Portland remains committed to mitigating the effects of climate change and investing in renewable and alternative sources of energy.
In 2019, he still may be an android.
Switching gears to the conversation about reducing interactions between sworn police officers and people in crisis on the street, and increasing opportunities for interactions with trained mental health and substance abuse professionals. Our office recently visited Eugene, Oregon to meet with members of the Whitebird Clinic there and take a look at their CAHOOTS program, which is a Eugene-based program that sends trained mental health and substance abuse experts to respond to 911 and non-emergency calls that don't necessarily need police intervention. Police, fire, the Bureau of Emergency Communications, Commissioner Hardesty is commissioner in charge of BOEC, went at a later date. Now 30 years old, CAHOOTS, which stands for Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets, has at least one of its 3 mobile units, which is a combination of ambulance and primary care clinic on call every hour of every day. Like traditional law enforcement teams, CAHOOTS responds to calls that come in through a regional 911 call center where perceptive operators evaluate if incoming calls merit actual police attention or whether they could be better handled by an unarmed mental health crisis worker paired with an EMT. We were extremely impressed with what we saw. We're bringing together players at the local level now to discuss how a similar system could be created here in Portland. We understand that some of these pieces already exist in our community. We have the service coordination teams, the behavioral health units, we have Project Respond, we have Cheers, and other pieces of this, but there's no clear coordination the way there is with the CAHOOTS program.
Is quite boring.
This is something that we could potentially create here in Portland. Our office has pulled together agencies and bureaus to begin this important conversation, including the Joint Office of Homeless Services, Multnomah County, the County Health Department,
more like a Ted Wheeler outtake,
Fire, BOEC, and Commissioners' offices. I don't know if there will be a specific ask in this budget cycle. We're still in a preliminary place, and we're looking at how we can best fill the gaps in our system. Relatedly, I went out with 211 a week ago, and I learned that welfare checks are still overwhelmingly conducted by sworn officers here in Portland. In Eugene, by comparison, they found a way to change that. We're going to keep exploring that as well. I have selected a new chief of staff. Today I'd like to make that announcement to you. I've selected Kristen Dennis, who has been serving as my interim chief of staff, as my permanent chief of staff. Kristen and I, of course, have a long working relationship together. She was my policy director when I was the state treasurer, and later she was my chief of staff. She's been serving of late as a deputy chief of staff, followed by her term as interim chief of staff. There's no question in my mind that she's the right choice for myself as mayor, and she's the right choice for my team, and I believe she's the right choice for this city. She stepped up in the last few months to serve as my interim chief of staff, and I have full confidence in her ability to continue to lead my team. With that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Mayor, the union representing Lieutenant Dia and others has filed a claim in human resources against you and other commissioners regarding the statements made about the tax. What's your reaction to that claim?
Well, first of all, the union has every right to be able to file those grievances, and I support that right for them to file those grievances. I believe ultimately the facts will not bear out the case they're trying to make. As I said, this was an issue that was of great concern to many people in the community. People can see the text messages. The Police Bureau, in the interest of complete transparency, has put all of those text messages on their website. I personally believe that a number of those questions, or a number of those text messages, raise significant questions. I would, for example, point out the issue of warrants.
I'm just trying to make
Is it police policy
oatmeal over
to
here.
coach some people on how to avoid
I think this
arrests
is a
when a
good point.
warrant for their arrest has been issued? And is that a uniformly supported policy? The only way to find the answer to those questions is through an investigation. And we have proposed both an internal investigation, which is standard protocol, and an independent external investigation. And let's wait and see where the facts lie.
I don't know how much
That
this
has
I can
not yet
handle.
been determined. The chief and I are working on that.
I don't know. I don't know about this one. This is so. We needed some sort of an
We are
outburst.
holding a community meeting this Thursday evening at Maranatha
We need
Church,
an outburst.
and we
Where's
certainly
Star?
welcome people's
Where's
perspectives.
Keith Davis? The old
If
man
the
with the
police
oxygen.
chief
I've interviewed him a
and
few
the police
times.
commissioner
Damn,
call
I'm getting old.
for an investigation, provided that we have parties that are willing to participate in that investigation can move forward. With regard to specific employment questions, the internal investigation is prescribed through the labor agreement we have with PPCOA.
When was the last time you had something like that done by the city?
I can't answer that question because I honestly don't know when the last
Aren't the
time was.
performances, though, by Robert West at City Council just like... It's like we need a double cam for the looks on the faces of the City Council and then a cam on the people that are actually speaking. I'm going to show you video of Wheeler at Top Off
Yes,
4.
the URM ordinance has been with us for a number of years. This certainly predates my tenure as mayor. As you know, this conversation has moved in several directions over the last several years. We had an independent committee that was convened by the Bureau of Emergency Management. They recommended increased seismic standards. I had proposed that we take those seismic standards and extend the timeline from 10 years or 15 years, in some cases to 30 years. The City Council was not there and would not support the immediate increasing of seismic standards in our community, so we went down an alternative path, which was, in the absence of clear seismic standards, let's go for full transparency and providing information to the public about the known demonstrable risks of unreinforced masonry buildings in a seismic zone, which is what we have. And the council passed on a 3-2 vote last year the requirement for placarding and notification of the public and tenants.
You need to pass an ordinance
that
makes it illegal to deliberately make people crazy in Portland.
She would bring this back, that she would repeal it.
We need a culture against mental insanity caused by
the fact
environmental influences.
In her latest iteration
of the
ordinance,
blight.
She seems to acknowledge the importance of notifying tenants of the real demonstrable risks. However, I believe that notification and that transparency should be extended to the public at large. So I still support the placarding ordinance that was passed by the City Council last year. I am highly unlikely to support any ordinance that does not allow for complete transparency and information to the public. My attitude is, why not give the public more information rather than less?
The federal government did not result the results of its Top Off 4 emergency test in 2007. Wheeler, are you going to ask the federal government to show us transparency regarding the federal government exercise in 2007 that took place in my hometown? Literally, I filmed like Ted Wheeler and he looked right at me.
I don't buy those
in
arguments
2007.
for two reasons.
I'm going to show you the clip.
Number one, on the face of it, we are not attaching anything. The urban legend is that this is a lien attached to people's deeds. The Bureau of Development Services and legal counsel have made it perfectly clear that that is in fact not the case. But it was a compelling talking point and it's persuaded a lot of people. I would be willing to accept this ordinance with that provision removed, because I still believe it would
locked eyes and
well-being,
yeah,
and increase the
a little antenna came out of the back of his head.
But
And he directed his directed energy weapon at me. And that was 2007.
Another subject,
He knew that I knew. He's like, I got one that can see.
intergovernmental agreement on controlling homeless camps and cleanup and making that streamlining the process. We're still seeing, especially some neighbors that are concerned that those camps continue. They evolve. It's like putting out small fires and we're seeing sanitation problems.
Have I ever told you how much I'm creeped out by Portland City Council? Like to be in that room, it's haunted as hell. I don't know. There's a BDSM chamber back in the day when they created Dante's
Yeah,
Inferno.
well, first of all, this is a much bigger question than just
Something went
the
down there.
appearance
Some
of public
KKK
right-of-way.
ritual.
So
I
let me
don't know.
step back
Masons.
and tell you that my administration is approaching the issue of homelessness
In the Portland City Council
and the issue
chambers.
of public safety and the issue of livability.
There's something going on there inside that building.
With regard to homelessness,
it's like Ghostbusters. I knew we were going to get a homelessness.
That program, particularly the Joint Office, which focuses on prevention.
Portland, Oregon, the city that creates homeless people that were born there.
Those prevention services and did not become homeless. We increased funding dramatically for the transition from shelter and from the streets into housing.
Portland, Oregon, the inspiration of Alex Ansary's good men being left behind.
Into permanent housing. We secured
Alex Ansary, megaphones, Cuddle House,
business license
YouTube.
That was a conversation that we had in collaboration with the business community that pays that tax.
Randy Leonard is a former council member, and Randy Leonard was asked by yours truly if he was threatened by the FBI when he voted to keep Portland in the JTTF. Yeah, a little bit of an OTB TV flashback. That video is still on YouTube. I think that was 2011. And I just got the vibe that the FBI was threatening council members to keep them in the JTTF. Just a feeling I got. So I feel like this guy is like in their hands. So people think like he's just a la-di-da-di-da leftist anti. They don't realize he's a system boy on a deeper level. Like them messing with him is kind of like really, really dumb for those people on the internet. This dude's connected. They want to mess around with the government, make threats. Dude, don't be dumb. This guy is not just some random guy who wrote in. He's some libtard. No. This guy has played Republican, Democrat. You don't know the Ted Wheeler that I think I'm seeing. It goes deeper than your left-right bullshit.
Intergovernmental agreement with ODOT so that the city of Portland could take up
ownership
of those right-of-ways in terms of keeping them clean. That agreement went into effect on January 1st. I will say in the last several weeks it has gotten noticeably worse because during the weather emergency or the winter storm warning, we suspended all cleanup operations. And so that did allow things to get a little worse than they might otherwise, but we are now back and focused with more resources.
But who is Terry Bean really?
Is it fast
who is he?
enough? No.
Is he a cool guy?
Enough. And
is he boring?
Come back to my
is he creative? He's like dance. Who is Terry Bean? Hashtag.
Our operations.
Because at some point, there's going to be people asking. Some signs have been shown recently by a few people.
To be responsive.
So, is it political grandstanding? Is that political grandstanding, some of what he's doing, because of the light being shined back at Portland?
I don't have a specific timeline because people will perceive it where they see it in front of their own homes. In the neighborhood where I live, I hear about a particular segment of I-405. I'm sure other people who live on 205 or I-84 or 26.
I think it's creepy that people have gone to his house, though.
Areas.
I mean, has he moved yet? Is he going to?
We obviously look for areas
that's crazy.
That pose an immediate threat to
people come up to his house protesting overnight and stuff, camping in his front yard.
Prioritized. It's my understanding that this week the focus has been predominantly over on I-5 on the east side of the river. But we'll keep plugging away at it. It's a big issue and it requires involvement from a lot of partners, but we're taking the lead on it.
Deep. That is profound of a thought. Don't worry, Portland. He's not going to let East Side fall into the abyss.
Because we are still evaluating those options.
They haven't forgotten the East Side. They won't forget. Never forget.
To me as mayor.
Portland's East Side.
I also have
Hashtag.
Partners who are interested in this question from an environmental perspective. So our strategy will unfold on this as it unfolds. Today,
you need like a special 82nd girls program for the girls that walk the streets of 82nd, like a special program to get them into alternative media, off the streets, out of hooking, and into speaking the truth.
Expansion ordinance,
like pay people to speak the truth.
Will be at the table.
Get them off that street, get them off that pole, and give them a microphone. That's right. From hooking to talking. That's right. They got to talk about all types of secrets, things they've seen. Portland's underworld. Get them off the streets, get them talking, get them showing Access TV, teach them how to speak better English. If all they've been asking their whole life is looking for a date, well, help a little girl out. Portland
So,
needs you, Ted
Nick,
Wheeler.
I might lean on you for just a sec on the specifics, but the crowd control directive is separate from what we're talking about here. This is a new independent external investigation, and it is focused narrowly on the question of communications.
Okay, this is not going to be about me and my wife. This is about the police
those who are
bureau
planning
and the
any
protesters.
demonstration in the city of Portland. What is our policy? Is it an appropriate policy? Is the policy uniformly implemented, or is there any bias in terms of how we implement this policy? And what does the Bureau actually get out
Ask
of
more
this
questions.
policy in terms of information? And is it worth it? Right now, the most valuable thing our police bureau has is trust.
Databases.
And we're in an era where policing is under siege. And when we have situations like this, where it calls into the question the potential for bias within the police bureau, that's very problematic.
So I'll get in
Now,
my
I know
thoughts
our
on
police bureau, the men and
VHX.
women there work very
Check out my video on
hard
VHX. I'll
to
give you
build
my thoughts on
trust, and I see them do
the
it every
text
day
messages.
in
They're
lots of
so
different
steamy.
ways.
They're too
And
hot.
then we run
Too hot
into,
for TV.
A bump in the road like this, and the wheels come off the proverbial.
Joking aside, the truth
and
is
we
too
have
hot
to
for
start
YouTube.
all over again and
Yeah.
scrape our way back.
Don't with bad boys,
I
sir.
believe
Bad
more
boys, bad boys. What you gonna
transparency
do?
is a good thing. And I know there will be some people who say, well, by calling for an investigation, or by calling for more transparency, or by even commenting or raising questions about things that people in the community are already commenting on and already raising questions about, that somehow calls into question my support of the work that the police bureau does, or my knowledge of the work that the police bureau does. People should not take it that way. They should take it as my sincere attempt to live up to the promise I made when I ran for this office, that our police bureau would be transparent, it would be accountable to the public that it serves, it would be relevant to the types of issues that we're facing.
So we create a see-through police station.
Reflective of the community we serve, and I aim to live up to that promise that I made.
You can see through the glass. See? Transparency. They should have like see-through like windows so they can watch people being booked.
But I could probably get it for you. I don't have it here with me today. I'm sorry, but I could probably get it. Nick, could you possibly follow up on
Maybe
that?
an open-air jail that just floats over our heads randomly. And they'll use drones. You know, in the future dystopian robot apocalypse of Portland, which I've written sci-fi short essays about at the age of 16 in 96. I get it out of a time machine, and it's the year 2030, and there's like robots making food for people. And a robot asked me for my ID card. I don't give it to him, and that's the end of me.
By the time I left the meeting, I wondered why I was there.
Portland 2030,
and
2055.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, what I had asked for, remember, this was in the wake of some other issues that we'd had. We'd had lots of people coming into the city.
Which means it would be facing the EMP and the big events before that.
And clearly from the public that they did not want people to come into our community, sometimes with the express intent of committing acts of violence, but at a minimum causing disturbance, at minimum.
And then they'll bring out the drones.
Some people in our community,
the women can hit a panic button and someone sexually assaults them or tries to, and the drone will come out with a taser.
Precious police resources and taxpayer expenditures. And my recollection,
it will tase the assailant.
I asked Mr. Gibson
the future of robotics and
those impacts.
Cell phone,
and he
smartphone police
didn't have a lot to say. So I left fairly unsatisfied. And by the way, just to be clear, I've had meetings and communications with lots of people who plan demonstrations, some of them more productive than others. No, that was the only time I've ever spoken to Mr. Gibson in person, with other people present, of course. He testified last week in front of the Portland City Council. So I see him regularly. He's here in Portland, I think, more than his hometown of Vancouver. I can't really comment beyond that.
What if this investigation of the lieutenant's communication shows that even though it appeared to be biased, it did prevent violence or damage from taking place in the community? How would you react to that?
Well, it's a hypothetical question. I guess I'd react to it when I see the results that say that. But I think at this point we have to keep an open mind. Let's let the investigation go where it goes. And again, what we're talking about here are text messages between Lieutenant Nia and Joey Gibson. But I believe, in fact,
photographs. Come on, photographs. Talk about it, Ted. Talk about the photos. I'm just kidding.
Or that particular perspective. I want to see them all. Let's just be open about it. If we believe that this is
all the
an
pictures.
Legitimate police tactic.
What about the phone calls?
At least
that's why I get into VHX. What did they talk about that you can't read?
And ask ourselves, is this comporting with our policy? Is this a good policy? Is it uniformly enforced? And is the value that we're getting from this as a police bureau worth it? I think those are legitimate questions for me to be asking as the elected mayor of this city and as the commissioner in charge of the police bureau.
But likely they'll be asking, what do they talk about on the phone when the text message it says, "Can I call you?"
Goes.
Says in the text messages, "Can I call you?" They talked about things that are not written down.
You know, I don't like to put down hard timelines. It'll take as long as it takes to do it right, and it should start sooner rather than later.
Baby, we can do it. Take the time, do it right. We can do it, baby. Investigate tonight.
Could you be more specific? I'm not sure I quite understand the question.
YouTube, Alex Ansary investigates the city of Portland, 2014, 2015. There's also other key episodes I did during my return. Also the Oregon Shanghai episode, talking about the origins of Portland being based on kidnapping. That evil energy is still there, and it'll be back with China Walks. When China walks up in this grill, there'll be some collecting. Some on record for over 10 years, warning of the future collections.
I don't know if it's changed
to a Pacific Northwest near you.
My perspective.
It's the collections.
It's certainly changed the sense
of the human assets.
So
I think Portland will be ground zero for something one day.
Dynamic of protest and counter-protest.
And there'll be all these people put all this time into protests and fighting and street fighting. And then in reality, they're actually going to be hit with an event. And in the entirety of the history of YouTube, there would only be one YouTuber, myself, warning you of future Portland threats, specifically the human trafficking epidemic run by China, Russia, using cartels for collecting. That's pretty specific. That's not running to little gate theories or just circles. That's a pretty specific warning to you. There's signs when we start going down that direction, like the war beginning, the economy crashing. There's going to be certain signs to just get out of Portland. And you're either like paying attention to me, or you're like, go left, right paradigm, anti-Far vs. Proud Boys, Patriot Prayer, and then getting bent because I'm outside the paradigm. Get with the real threats that are coming and ask yourself, why would there be shadowy forces trying to divide your city? Maybe even on both sides. And I said before, including elements of the far left. I mean, we can look back to 2010, 2011. There were some things that were going on, like city to city, in which violence was being promoted and property destruction as a result of high-profile police shootings. I spoke against it. Others were writing about it. Like, does this seem to be something that's really, like, moving things forward? And so we need to move beyond the fight in the streets and the smashing of things and have intelligent dialogue about the issues that matter. That's why I want to go out being heard, the things that I care about, the things that I was trying to warn people about, the people that I cared about. A society.
Well, first of all, let me be clear.
That I would no longer call home, but I would be born out of. I would exit the human female
of my constituents
in Portland, Oregon in 1980.
To the text messages.
So as a result, my focus is on you, city of my birth.
An investigation, calling for an independent look,
reviewing my years and years of predictions of things that are to come,
policies and are they being
trying to educate the audience about Operation Blackjack.
Those are completely legitimate questions.
And if that's predictive programming regarding the Portland false flag to be blamed on Muslims before internment,
warrants stating that the lieutenant involved in this situation is absolutely entitled to due process. My questions actually go beyond the question of the lieutenant. My questions really are we truly enforcing our policies uniformly?
And this is a key point.
And I'm going to give you a specific example, Gordon. I stood before all of you last month, and I told you that warrants are uniformly enforced in this city. And I told you,
I mean, it's way
based on
deeper than what
information
he's
that
even
I
saying.
received from the police bureau, that it was in fact a requirement of police officers to
And police
enforce
standing down while
warrants.
Tiny beat up
That was a
people, even at the
conversation.
University of
The
Washington.
context was
It's
the
all over YouTube.
investigation around the arrest
Even hitting
of
some
homeless
people that
individuals
were
in the
not involved
community.
in
Do you
throwing
remember
swings
that
at him.
conversation?
Okay, so that
So now
is,
I see
by
text
textbook definition,
messages
assault. You have selective enforcement of
that
assault.
legitimately, just black and white on their face, call into question whether or not, in fact, that is true.
The behaviors of Antifa or
Either
others does
warrants
not
are
then give the others a free
required to be
pass to do
followed
whatever they
up on,
want,
and
even
they
people
are
they
uniformly
label
enforced,
Antifa.
or they are
That's
not.
fascism.
Which
You
is
don't get
it?
to play that card. That's hypocrisy. I'm saying to,
Doesn't
like,
this
the
at least
zombies out
warrant
there.
further
Two
investigation?
wrongs
I
don't
think
make a
it
right.
does.
At some point, you got to understand two wrongs don't make a right. And whatever did happen to the anti-war movement? Why did everything come under the flag
I
of
don't know that
Antifa?
that's
That's
what it
bullshit.
says.
That's bullshit,
You
Ted.
know, that's why I would call for
No, that's not his
us to
fault. That's
wait until
Portland's
the
fault. Like,
facts
what the
come out.
fuck,
There's
Portland?
context
You
for
stop
everything.
doing
You can pull
like
anything
peace
out of
marches? You
context
all come under the flag of
and make it
Antifa?
say
If
something
you're going to
that
do
didn't
something?
say it didn't mean. And that's why, again, I'm saying let's
And I know that's
wait
not always
for
the case, but
facts
that's
to
how it's
come
seen
out.
to the
Let's
people
finish
of
the
the
investigation and
world.
see what
So
it
good
says.
Portlanders that are out there that are in the movement, try to like create like other names outside. Don't come under like one umbrella. I'm not judging you necessarily. I'm making a constructive criticism suggestion that a real peace rally come back that doesn't have all the trimmings of Antifa. Maybe there can even be like a real dialogue bridging for the real people that actually care, even if people are swept up in the left right.
I have
The people that
raised the
generally care and
question,
aren't there to
but I
fight
have
should
to
be able to
admit
talk
it's
about
been
the issues that
obliquely.
matter.
So maybe not as directly as you just posed the question, but I have certainly raised the question of bias. It's something that people talk about all the time with regard to policing, not just here in Portland, but nationally. And when
It's
I go to
coming out nationally about the
mayoral
ties between the
conferences
groups
and
and
meetings of public
police.
safety
There's all
that
types
come
of
up,
articles all over
bias
from
is a really
California
important issue. And that's why
to
when Chief
Charlottesville to
Outlaw,
other
I mean, one of the
places. There's a
reasons
lot
I
coming out
liked
now
Chief
nationwide.
Outlaw, and one of the reasons I brought her in to lead my police bureau was because she understood these things. She understood the question of bias. And you'll remember the firestorm we went through on just the suggestion in the application that people have an understanding of the history, for example, of race in this city. A lot of people didn't like that being called out explicitly, but it was. But yes, I've raised the question, and others have raised the question publicly, and people come into this chamber approximately every Wednesday morning at about 9:31, and they raise the question of bias in policing. And the only way we can tell whether there is actual bias is through thoughtful, meaningful investigation.
So I'm
And
always
again,
trying to help people understand that elements of white supremacy can be seen on the left as well. It's not just a right-wing thing. And one time, Willamette Week said top 40 reasons why Portland is so badass and awesome. And it was during that period in which I was home free, in which I returned to Portland in maybe 2014. And one of the 40 reasons was Portland being one of the whitest cities or the whitest cities. And that's cool if you're down. But that for a leftist publication, a Willamette Week, to say that's one of the 40 top reasons why it's best, that's kind of overt. So, like, if there's going to be accountability and speaking about these things, racial supremacy, don't just blame a group that you don't like. Look at the systemic institutionalization within your own media. That's what I'd like.
has anything to, Burke, you
Yeah.
want to come talk for a sec while I drink some coffee? This is Burke Nelson. He's my public safety advisor.
Hi.
Hey,
Good evening.
shout out to Eli
This
Ritchie.
afternoon, everyone. My name is
I
Brooke
want to
Nelson,
ask my
Senior
audience to
Advisor,
pray for
from the
Eli
Maryland,
and his
regarding this
protection
question.
as he
Sorry,
continues, and may he have
NEL,
more
sorry.
luck. This is like a full
I
moon
believe the question
affirmation
was, has
than he
anyone,
did in the
or has
previous
the mayor
year.
looked into
He's had a lot of crap thrown at
people who
him
are
from the
readily
Portland police.
identifiable and can
And
they
his
be
luck,
arrested
maybe the
for
energy may be
acts
changing.
of violence?
The
Is that
stars may be
so?
realigning. We've all gone through some
Right.
crap.
So, actually,
I'm
there was a
lucky.
meeting
I got out of Portland with my head on my
January
shoulders.
23rd of this year, where PBB,
Some people say I lost it.
detectives,
Did I lose
myself,
it or did I find it?
the district
Tomato,
attorney's
tomato.
office representative were there, and we went through, I think it was the October 23rd protests or I guess, melee that took place out of Kells Olympian. And we went through frame by frame, and they broke down the difference between self-defense, where fights took place. And there are people who are identifiable on that video, but the problem is you also
Look up
have
Mike
to have
Blue
someone
Hair.
who's willing
Proud
to
Boys and
file a
Antifa
complaint.
maul each other.
And
It's
so
that
we need to
video.
get
That
cooperation
was
from
some
the public.
hardcore street
There
fighting.
needs to be a
Some of those
complainant
dudes looked like
for
they
the
were
police to
prison
go
fighters.
forward within the
Straight up the
investigation.
penitentiary.
And
Now
so
into the
during that
right wing.
meeting, they explained to me
USA.
why they had such
USA.
difficulty
Being bussed in from multiple
filing,
states. Yeah, projecting,
or
saying that's what
not
the other
filing
side's
complaints, but
doing it. While
arresting
they did
individuals
it.
who were
Yeah, they
identified
bust their
on
dudes
that
in
video.
using Roger
I
Stone's
can
money.
speak to you more about it offline, but it's a very complicated.
That's what I think, because Roger Stone is photographed with these
legal
dudes.
issue with
Hanging out with
self-defense
them,
and
drinking in
people who
Washington. Roger
I
Stone.
guess,
I mean,
acquiescing
what a
to
freak.
violence
Look at the
and
dude.
coming in a form of mutual combat.
Alex
So, yes, we
Jones,
have
do I have
looked
to go
into
any further?
answer
This
that.
worked on people? That makes me scared, man. What else is going to work?
Yes. Yes.
Their ethno-state nightmare is not over. They
That is
just
hard
got
to
warmed
guess.
up. It needs to be like a real independent
I'm not saying that
representation
mutual combat is not a crime. I'm saying that during the discussions I
of the
had with
independent
the
voice without
district attorney's
Democrats or
office,
Republicans
they've explained to me the difficulty they're having
defecating on the
with
message.
prosecuting individuals. They're having problems identifying individuals who are not coming forward, saying that they're victims of the violence, and then there's also people who are acquiescing to having a mutual combat. And so when that takes place, it's very hard to prosecute those type of offenses.
But some of those crimes can be prosecuted without the cooperation of witnesses, victims necessarily.
That is correct.
Is that not possible, or is that more difficult?
It's more difficult, yes.
Thanks, Burke.
You know, that is an important point that he made there, that it's mutual combat, it's difficult legally, and that's something to consider. With that, and people taking advantage of
That's a
that, and people in
personnel
the
matter.
media taking advantage of that, like Alex Jones and others that want to see big fights and street fights and crap.
That's a personnel matter.
And there are people that are figuring
can't
out
answer
now,
that
and they're
for
trying to
you.
work around the system, thinking like they can act like outlaws.
Yes.
Various people, behavior on all sides.
Yes, it's a personnel matter.
I have seen in Portland through these videos, and I denounce it. And I think it's wrong when we see people on video getting allowed to do that, and then some of us
Does anybody
have
have
just
any
merely
disclosures
struggled
they'd
against
like
people
to
trying to
make?
rob us of our camera and or other
Seeing none.
things.
Nope. Good.
And we
We're
have
good.
been treated with fairness by law enforcement, many of us. So when we see law enforcement stand down, when we watch this white civil war with a few minorities and islanders, that's really kind of like disrespectful to those of us that have generally been fucked with by police. You know what I mean? Like, people just shouldn't just be like, okay, we're going to have a big fight club. But it's kind of ironic that if you look up Portland today, there actually is some sort of a hipster fight club. Looks like Burning Man. Where
I
people
would
literally
say
are street
that
fighting.
at every turn,
So there's something about Portland where it's got the
I have
fight,
tried
fuck,
to
fight
find
or flight
any way legally possible
with a
and
jalapeno burger and an
constitutionally
IPA.
possible to limit
That
these
sounds
kinds
good
of
right now.
roving street brawls that we've seen on the streets
Roving
of this
street
city.
brawls.
Not just because
It's in the spirit of
important to
Portland.
me, but because this is what the public demands.
From the
We're
stories of
tired
the
it.
A-Man back in the day
And
to the manifestation of the modern day.
I would simply say
Yay.
my desire to limit these street brawls does not give anybody,
He's
nor
sad.
should it give anybody encouragement to violate policies or
Damn,
do
the world's
things that
really
do
screwed
not
up.
comport
Yeah, it is, Ted. You
with
should
the
become a
values of our
subscriber.
police bureau.
Ted Wheeler should listen to Alex Ansary. He should do meditations, doing deep breathing while listening to the Alex Ansary YouTube channel. Ted, let me help you. Your soul is being sucked
No,
by
really, I
elements
have no
of
regrets,
the
and I'll
system.
tell you why.
Break free
I don't
all the way.
call tactics on these demonstrations. I used to, early on in my administration, I did show up at the operations center where the decisions are being made, and there is an individual
said, top
who is
off war.
actually the incident commander, and then they have people.
I have an
working under
emergency
them,
command room
and then
that I
there's a
like to
number
go
of
in, and it
attorneys
has a little
making sure
room,
that due
and
process
we watch
is taken
videos
care of and
on a
legal
laptop.
rights are being adhered to. And
They tell
I
me
went as an
stuff.
advisor
I don't do research. I don't know
to
the difference
one
between the
such
groups.
demonstration,
I just have people give me
and
clip
as a
notes.
result, I spent a year in litigation.
I'm just trying
with
to,
the question
grandstand here,
being,
folks.
did
Just
I
don't-
direct the police bureau
didn't.
on tactics? Did I tell them what to do? Did I tell them who to arrest and whatnot?
It's dumb for people to call him Antifa. Haven't you seen the videos of the police hitting the protesters with the flashbangs? I mean, to a certain degree, like for a while there, they were like all coming after the mayor for like allowing the police to clean up the streets. So people need to get their Portland history
strategic
straight.
oversight, expressing,
I mean,
in
seriously,
my opinion, I've been very public about
him not
what
liking
my
Patriot
preferences
Prayer
and what
doesn't
I
make him
believe the
anti-FA.
people that I'm elected to serve want, and I leave the operationalization of those tactics
But
to the
check this
president.
out. Check this out.
He is the
With the
boss. He
far right
directs
group,
attack.
when they could start running around on a national level demasking, what do you think is going to happen when they come against a Muslim? You think they're going to leave that Muslim alone? You think this is an accident? Hashtag demask.
Sorry,
Not unmask, but demask. There was a woman in Portland with a scarf. She wasn't a Muslim. She just had a scarf because it was cold. And some dudes came up to her and they're like, take your mask off. She's like, what mask is the scarf? I don't think it's an accident that you have
I'm
elements of the
sorry,
controlled
I
opposition
don't,
moving for the
Gordon, I
next
don't know
level of
the
the chess
status
piece.
on that.
And it's not going to make Americans look good. And it seems like that's their job, to even like discredit their own arguments, some arguments on both sides may be concrete. I mean, may be valid on the left and the right, liberal, conservative. So why enable far left or far right extremists? And why use the behavior of one extreme side to
That's
justify one's own
a very
behavior? Oh, ain't that some
provocative
hypocritical
question.
bullshit?
I believe at
Oh,
the
ain't
end of
that
the
a joke?
day, it makes it easier. I was in Salem yesterday testifying on behalf of Senate Bill 608, and all of my colleagues on the City Council have joined me in supporting Senate Bill 608. Just as a reminder, Senate Bill 608 provides a framework for just cause eviction that is statewide. It also provides a rent stabilization strategy that is, again, statewide. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that housing isn't just a local issue, it is a regional issue. And I think about the greater metro area. When we passed our RELO ordinance here at the City of Portland, which I think on the whole has
Behold
been
the land that has
successful,
run out of space.
there were others in the outskirts
Behold the
of
dense
Portland
population
and
center.
those who are elsewhere in the region who
Behold the
did
have
not
and have
get
nots.
those same protections. And so there's been something of a back and forth between
Behold the city of the wounded goddess.
housing and the development community about what's the right balance regionally. And I think by going statewide,
Can you imagine
this is
Portland
a good
under
first
a
step.
real
It is a
economic
measured
collapse?
step. It's
Not
one
the
that I
hee hee ha ha
support,
one.
and it's
Oh,
one
it
that
might come
ultimately I
tomorrow.
believe
Oh,
will
it might
lead
come
to
tomorrow.
more
I
stabilized
mean, come on, we're
housing
in perpetual
for
economic
people
collapse
across the
now in the
state.
news. What about a
Be a
real
good thing for the
economic
Portland
collapse
metro region.
where people are hungry? How many people are going to start hooking right away so they can eat? And by the way, where's the food going to come from? In a major event. You know what I think? I think Portland's going to be ground zero for a major event. And I'm one of the few people you've ever heard ever warn you about this. I'm Alex Ansary. I think it's time to sign off.